What will happen to the Kansas City real estate market in 2024? Similar to last year, there are two main factors that will basically determine everything that happens from this point forwards. However, we're in a completely different trajectory, headed in almost the opposite direction we were. In this video, I'm going to answer these three questions. One, what's happening with mortgage rates right now? Second, how fast are homes selling in Kansas City? And third, will home prices in Kansas City drop sometime this year? Now, before I answer those questions, what are these two main factors and why do they matter in the first place? The first one, interest rates. Over the last couple of years, inflation was sky high. Here's what happened to the federal funds rate, which has a correlation with how expensive mortgage rates are. You can see we were on a steady climb over the past couple of years, but since then we've hit quite a plateau, which is what leads to number two, the housing shortage, the number of homes available for sale in the Kansas City area. Over the last year, as those mortgage rates were climbing up and up and up, fewer and fewer people wanted to sell their homes because that would mean exchanging a 3% or a 2.5% mortgage rate for something above 6.5%, and even above 7%, which would more than double the amount of money they'd have to spend every single month just to pay their mortgage. And as a result, here's what happened with the Kansas City housing shortage. You can see a clear stair-step decline almost each and every year as those mortgage rates went up. And of course, the jury is still out for 2024. By the way, if this is your first time seeing my videos, my name's Nick Massa. I'm a licensed real estate agent in Kansas and Missouri. I make these videos hopefully to make your journey buying or selling a home in Kansas City that much easier. It's also where 90% of my clients find me. So if you have any specific questions about this stuff, you can reach me through my contact info below. And we're going to move on to that first question, which is what is happening with mortgage rates in 2024? Here's that same graph that I showed you earlier of the federal funds rate, which yes, has been increasing, but it seems to have plateaued. And to just take a mental image of that, because here are what mortgage rates look like, basically the exact opposite, where they have started to decrease as the federal funds rate, the interest rate, has really started to plateau, which is really good news. Now, as you can see, around February 2nd, when this data was taken, mortgage rates were around 6.9%, which isn't ideal. But again, the fact that we have plateaued and we don't have an expectation that interest rates will increase anytime soon is really, really good news. And I'll explain a little bit more as to why that's the case here in just a second. When it comes to what will happen with mortgage rates over the next couple months and the rest of the year, first, everything hinges on whether the Federal Reserve decides to start cutting interest rates. If they do that, we'll likely see mortgage rates start to fall. However, the next time the Federal Reserve meets to discuss whether or not they'll do that is in March. And according to this article from CNBC, the Federal Reserve says they would likely not be comfortable enough with the path of inflation by its next meeting in March to cut interest rates. And Jerome Powell, the lead decision maker here, echoed that and says, I don't think it's likely the committee will reach a level of confidence by March to identify that as the time to do it, but that's to be seen. Now, that last phrase is very important because he's not completely shutting the door, just saying that it seems unlikely. And of course, anything could change, but it seems like mortgage rates at a bare minimum will remain flat throughout that time. Now, as for the question of what will happen over the rest of 2024 with mortgage rates, according to this article from Forbes, they pulled many different experts to see where they thought we would land by the end of the year. And according to the National Association of Realtors, they say between 6 and 7%. RSM says 6 to 6.5%. Mortgage Bankers Association says around 6.1% and then 5.5% by the end of 2025. Bank of America says we'll see a gradual decline. Fannie Mae says, yep, we'll probably be at around 7% in quarter one and then slowly decline to a 6.5%. And the rest of the experts pretty much echo the same thing. Now, the big elephant in the room is that 6% mortgage rates, 7% mortgage rates obviously is not ideal, right? 2 years ago, we were dealing with like 3 and sub 3% mortgage rates. Still not good. However, the reason that it's different this time around, just like I showed you on the federal funds rate, just like I showed you on the graph of mortgage rates, they seem to be more consistent. They seem to be more predictable. And there are two clear distinctions I want to make about this year as compared to last year when we were still on the upward trend of mortgage rates increasing. The first is that most people have adapted, or at least internalized and accepted, the idea of 6% mortgage rates. Of course, it depends on whether you have to move by necessity or you just really want to move really badly. But for the most part, it's way more normalized this year than it was last year. The second difference is that we're talking about a more stable, a more predictable and consistent 6 to 7% mortgage rates as compared to like the pinball mortgage rates we were seeing a year ago today. So what I'm saying here is that a normalized 6% and a stable 6% is far more conducive to people buying or selling homes even if that mortgage rate seems a little bit high, just because there's less unpredictability involved in the decision. Question number 2, how fast are homes in Kansas City selling right now? Before I show you the massive shift that happens in March and April of this year, I want to include a caveat. All the information I'm going to show you is from the multiple listing service, the MLS. This is what all the real estate agents use. It's also what Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, all the home search sites where they're pulling their data from. So I'm showing you where the source of that data is coming from. I'm also excluding any new construction homes because they skew how quickly homes are going under contract. Some of them are listed while they're still under construction. I'm also excluding anything that is not a single family home. So all townhomes, apartments, condos, all of those are excluded from this data as well. So here's what's happening in Johnson County, at least over the last couple months. September, October, you can see we're hovering between 3 days to go under contract and all the way up to around 8 days to go under contract in January. The reason I'm showing you the median instead of the average is because the average includes all of the extreme outliers that have been on the market for months and months and months, and the median accounts for that, is way more representative, what you'll actually see if you're shopping for homes. Now, if we cross state line and go to Jackson County, you'll see they're hovering between 7 days to sell and all the way upwards of 28 days to sell on the market. So they're taking a little bit longer in Missouri than they are in Kansas. But no matter what county you're in the Kansas City area, things are going to change in March and April. And that's because that's when more people are selling their homes. It's when more people start looking for homes. That first phase is really the heaviest, as most people are trying to get it done before school ends and they go on summer break. Here's what the data looks like for the last 5 years. You can see in March, April, and May, at least in 2021, 22, and 23, it was taking around 2 to 3 days for most homes to sell. Now, what that actually looks like in reality is the home gets listed on a Friday. There's maybe an open house on a Saturday or Sunday, but you can certainly bet that there are plenty of agents going in and out of those homes to the point where it feels like an open house. So listed on Friday, it's usually under contract by Sunday afternoon, evening, or Monday morning. And that's usually what we see. Any properties that don't sell that first weekend, they're probably not going to go way over asking price, but there's a chance that you're going to be in multiple offer scenario if you're going after one of those homes that sells in like the first 2 to 3 days. Now, that's why if you plan on buying a home in Kansas City this year, it's kind of like walking a tightrope, and you have to make sure you have a solid plan and strategy in place to make sure you get a home at a good price. Because the alternative, there are 2 different versions of it. One is where you're not aggressive enough, you're not strategic enough with your offers, and you fall in love with one house after another, right? Offer after offer after offer, just to have to reinvent the wheel every single weekend you go out looking for homes. The alternative is like this is the complete opposite of that, where you're too aggressive with your offer, you give away too much money, and then you're in a situation where maybe the home doesn't appraise at the price you've offered for it. So you've got issues there. Maybe you get cold feet because you feel like you're overpaying for a property. The market value doesn't support it. In worst case, maybe you go through with that transaction just so you don't have to worry about continuing to write offer after offer, and you're walking into negative equity from the get-go. That's why it's important to have a solid plan and strategy if you are going to buy a home this year. And if you want to make sure you're finding the perfect home without having to write offer after offer, or without having to overpay for a property and be in the red from the get-go, make sure to reach out. All my contact info is below. So if you give me a phone call, email, text message, we can put together a strategy that helps you maneuver both of these things while finding the perfect home for you. And finally, will home prices in Kansas City fall in 2024? My answer to this is going to be very similar to my answer last year. You can go back and watch those videos, but I think it was even more of a bold prediction to make that home prices would increase over the last year, while mortgage rates hit like the highest point they've been in the last 2 decades. And the simple reason is because of supply and demand. So if you take a look at the numbers, Zillow, their home value index shows that home values in Jackson County went up 5.7%. If you look at Johnson County on the Kansas side, they went up 5.7% as well. If you look at Redfin's numbers, which is actual home prices based on home sales, went up about 5%. So it's very safe to say that no matter which way you slice the data, home prices over the last year in Kansas City went up somewhere between 4 and 6%. Of course, there are outliers on either side. Of course, it matters which city you're in, which specific county that you're looking at, but home prices went up last year. I think that they're going to go up even more this year for a couple different reasons. And the first one we've already covered, right? Mortgage rates. Even though they're still high, more people have been able to adjust, right? They've been able to wrap their heads around the fact that this is kind of the new normal. 2.5%, 3% mortgage rates, not normal in the least bit. So one is just time to adjust. 6% rates, 7% rates, they've become more normalized. The second is there's a big difference between a predictable and consistent 6 to 7% mortgage rate environment environment versus an unpredictable one. Right? If you're going to buy or sell a home, even if mortgage rates are high, you certainly don't want to do it. There's certainly going to be more resistance to doing it when they're changing every couple days, right? Nobody likes uncertainty, especially when you're selling an asset worth multiple six figures, if not seven figures in value. And then the third main reason is if you look at everybody who bought a home around like pre-COVID, 2.5%, 3% mortgage rates, every single year that goes on, they get more and more likely to sell those homes. And you can only hold out for so long. It's just like a bear that's hibernating, who's getting hungrier and hungrier by the day. We're just going to see a normal upstick because of that and because of those three factors we talked about. So the fact of the matter is that home prices do not look like they're going to go down anytime soon. Of course, I could be wrong. Maybe there's some black swan event that nobody can predict as of right now. They could take out the economy and the housing market. But aside a black swan event like that, it seems extremely, extremely unlikely that home prices will decrease. And if you're betting on home prices falling, you're going to be betting for a very, very long time. So if we're looking at a situation where home prices are going to keep going up and up and up, and the reason you're not buying a home is because of mortgage rates right now, keep in mind that it's going to get even more competitive. You might even end up spending even more money once those rates fall and everybody jumps back into the housing market. That's all I've got for this video. Feel free to reach out with any questions. My contact info is down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any future Kansas City real estate market updates or Kansas City real estate related videos on this channel. And in the meantime, you can go ahead and watch this video that YouTube thinks you would enjoy the most, or you can watch one of my most recent videos right up here. Click on either of those and I'll see you on the other side.